Welcome to Game Dev for Dummies. Even if you've been in the game for years, these tips may still apply to you. I know some still do to me. 1. Know your tools before you start working on a serious project. When I first installed Unity and started to learn coding, I did something I shouldn't have. I attempted to make a full game that I wanted to release at some point, and spoiler alert, it never got released. The problem was that I didn't know the tools, nor did I have the experience to ever achieve what I had envisioned for that project. The best thing you can do is to challenge yourself by making one small prototype a week and to follow a bunch of tutorials to help yourself familiarize with the tools you've chosen. Basic understanding of coding and game design is essential to have before you start on a real project, because my main pitfall was the inconsistency in code from the start compared to what I had written near the end of the project. 2. Keep the scope of your project realistic based on your current abilities and resources. Don't keep adding to your list of features. Ask yourself with every new feature if it's really necessary to add to your game. The project I worked on before Untitled, which I have only teased so far, had this issue. Though it isn't cancelled, I put it on hold for now because the scope of it was too big for me to handle. I spent 2 years working on it, adding to it constantly, and writing a 50+ page story for it, only to realize that it would take me probably at least another 2 years to finish it with the experience, time, and resources I had at the time. So, to avoid having to scope down, right now I'm stuck with a game that I loved working on and want to finish, but can't because I have to wait till I have all the time and resources I need. 3. No open world. This ties in perfectly to the last tip. As tempting as it may be to make the next GTA or Saints Row, you shouldn't make one of your first projects an open world game. The amount of work that will go into designing the map for an open world can be ridiculous. And not only that, you'd also have to make the map interesting and fun so that the player would be able to entertain themselves without following the main objective of your game. I tried to make a small open world map for my very first attempt at a game, and it didn't even make sense to have one in that project. So, obviously that game never saw the light of day. 4. Show off your work early and often. It's scary to show off your work, I know this, especially if it's still a work in progress. You might be afraid that people will tell you that it sucks, but this is far from true. The game dev communities on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and more are usually very supportive and really nice. I wish I would have done this sooner with any of my older projects, but the support I'm getting now for Untitled is more than I thought we would get, and it only motivates us to continue working on our projects, because it's sometimes very easy to stop working on a game that no one knows about yet, and yes, I speak from experience. And even if people do respond with something less than positive, don't take it the wrong way if it's genuine feedback, because if it is, it's only meant to help improve what you're trying to make. 5. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's kinda common sense, but I also struggle with this from time to time. Sometimes you might get stuck somewhere and Google might not have the answer for you. And no matter how much you try, you can't figure it out yourself. No worries there, we've all been there, and even professionals get stuck sometimes. Most indie devs are usually willing to help, if they're not too busy, so ask around on forums like the Unity forums or in any indie dev Discord server for help if you need a push in the right direction. 6. It's okay to buy and use assets made by other people. I was an intern at a company when I started working on my first game ever, and the game designer they had was teaching me to code and helping me understand Unity. But since he was busy working on an actual project for the company, he didn't always have time to help me with code, and therefore I started watching and following a lot of tutorials. At some point though, I started to feel like it was becoming less of my game and more of a collection of code from tutorials I found online, which is technically true, but that doesn't make it any less of my game. Same goes for buying or using paid or free assets. Those assets exist to be used. No one is going to claim that your game is not your game just because you use something made by someone else. With permission, of course. Some, if not most, of your art, code, and assets will be replaced at some point. It's a bummer, for sure, because most of the time when you start working on something, you hope that you get it right in one try. And even if you think you got it right, you'll probably come up with ways to improve parts of it sooner or later. But that's a good thing. Even if something isn't final for now, it gives you the ability to move on and work on other things and parts of your game and getting a clearer picture of where you're headed with your game. 8. Don't be afraid to speed things up in your game. This all comes down to personal style and preference, so this isn't really something you can do right or wrong, but something I see in a bunch of indie games is that the gameplay or animations are very slow. Let's say you're making a platforming game and jumping straight up and falling back down to the ground takes about 5 seconds. That might mess with the flow of your game. Obviously, if it's a platformer set in space or a world with low gravity, it would make perfect sense, but don't be afraid to experiment with the speed of things. People like a challenge. Up the speed for your player, the enemies, the animations, or whatever. Just play with the tempo and overall speed and make sure it's still fun and challenging to play. But again, this is all up to you and how you want to make your game. 9. Spend enough time on audio. You can have AAA graphics or make something completely in an 8-bit style. That is up to you. But make sure you spend enough time on audio regardless of what you're making. Bad audio design, unfitting music, annoying sound effects, and poorly balanced volume all contribute to people dropping your game faster than how quickly they lost all respect for Randy Pitchford. Best thing you can always do is to involve someone with your project that knows a thing or two about audio design, but if your budget doesn't allow for that, or if you just don't know the right people that can help you out, make sure you spend enough time yourself learning about what would benefit your game in the audio department. Number 10, take a break. Easily the best tip on this list. Also one of the easiest tips to postpone. I get that sometimes you want to work on your projects day in and day out for weeks or months on end. I've done the same, but it's a given that you should sometimes take a break, especially if you're ever stuck with coding. Don't force yourself to continue and fix it. So many of my problems were fixed almost instantly after taking a break, even if it was only for a few hours. That big and beautiful brain of yours needs a rest as well. Alright, well, hopefully one or more of these tips were useful to you, and if not, this video will just be a reminder for myself to not make the same mistakes I've made in the past. Give every department of your game the proper attention it needs, be a part of the community, share your progress, and reach out if you're stuck. There will always be someone with useful feedback. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, and if you didn't like it, hit the button next to that. Also consider checking out our Patreon if you want to support the channel or the development of Untitled. And if you want more regular updates, follow me on Twitter at AllRightMarty or join the Discord. Link is in the description down below. See you next time.